All right. In the previous section, we learned a little bit about PayPal's new xComponent library. So now we're going to do a little exercise in order to use it in our application that we've been developing throughout the previous sections. So our company recently heard about a new library called xComponent that is supposed to make it easy to develop cross-domain components. We want to convert our post-robot login application from the previous exercise into an xComponent. Then merchants can pull our component and render it on any page they want and drastically reduce the code that they have to write. So we're going to use the files in the client/xComponent folder in our training application to complete this exercise. And this exercise is going to be split into 3 parts in order to upgrade our post-robot application to use xComponent. We're not actually going to be adding any new functionality here. First, we'll complete the logincomponent.js definition file. Remember, that's the file that is included on both the parent and the child. And we're going to implement the defined properties on the login.html and call the render lightbox. And then we are going to implement the 3 x properties on our login.html. All right, so part 1, let's complete the definition file. So let's locate part 1 in the login-component.js file. Pause the video and take a couple minutes to try and solve this part on your own. Follow the inline comments to complete. All right, if you haven't done so, please pause the video now because I'm about to go over the answers for this part. All right, so I'm going to get to the training application, and we're under client xComponent login component.js. All right, so it looks like I've already started the component definition for us. We have a tag which really isn't used since we're calling the render. Then we have the URL, which is just the URL to our iframe page, which in this case is our login.html. We have the dimensions that we want to initially set. We have a log level. And then we have our props. So remember, props are the actual properties that are messaged between the parent and the child. So part 1 here says complete the component definition file, implement the following properties: email, on login, get user, and user. All right, so let's take this one at a time. We'll say, all right, we want email. So we would just say email. And email is a type of string, and it is not required. And then we have on login, which is a type of function, is required. We have a get user, which is a function. It is not required. And then we have a user, which is an object. All right, go ahead and save. All right, now returning back to presentation, we will see the answer. So you can take a second and pause and finish typing the answer out. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the second part of this exercise, which is implement the defined properties. So for this one, we're going to locate part 2 in the login.html file. So this is going to be our parent. So go ahead and pause this video and take a couple minutes to try and solve this part on your own. Follow the inline comments to complete. And as another note, you'll probably want to look at the xComponent documentation in order to get the syntax correctly, and then you will be calling the render lightbox function and not the render function like you see in the documentation. All right, let's go ahead and pause this video and take a couple minutes to complete this exercise. All right, if you haven't paused the video, please go ahead and do it now because I'm about to go over the answer. All right, so let me go to our application and we will go to login.html. All right. So we're going to implement define properties on the login component. So you'll see at the top that I'm already including our component, login component.js. And our login component is called login component. So we would say login component dot render lightbox. So now remember, whenever we do a render, we pass it the properties that we want to message back and forth. So if we go, we set up the email property, and we want it to be test@awesome.com, get user, and for this we're going to send the get user function. And then on login, send the on login. And we're not going to set the user object. All right, so let's go just take a look and see real quick what get user and on login are doing. Get user is looking for a response. Then we're saving this, and we are setting our user and the props to our response. So when the user comes back, we're just setting it on the component just to store it. Then we are checking for the email, and if the email is set, that means the user is logged in. We are calling this.hide, which actually hides the lightbox on the xComponent. And then we are saying, all right, so we have a user. Now we need to set to the logout button, and we are saying, on click of logout button, we want to call our component props user logout. So we're calling that user logout function. And then we are doing component.show, which will then make the lightbox reappear. And then also we are displaying the user information. All right, so the onLogin function simply looks at the response.email, and if it's set, we say alert congrats on the login, and then we're just saying we're going to call the get user function because it already does everything that we need it to. No reason to rewrite it in the onLogin function as well. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and save this file. We'll go back to our presentation. All right, and you'll see the answer just like we did in our application. So if you didn't get it all typed in, go ahead and do that now. We'll move on to part 3. So part 3, we're going to implement the xprops. So we're going to locate the three part 3 sections in our login.html file. And this is actually the child component, xComponent, since it's in our login.html. And then go ahead and pause this video, take a couple minutes to try and solve these parts on your own, and follow the inline comments to complete. All right, if you haven't paused the video, please do so now because I'm about ready to go over the answers to this part of this exercise. We'll switch back over to my training application. All right, and we'll open our login.html. Here's part 3. It says implement the email xprop. Set email input value to the email xprop. So now with xComponent, this makes it even easier. So all we have to do is say document.getElementById, example input email like we've been using before, .value equals window.xprop, xprops.email. So you can see that cut out a lot of effort on our part. Before we had to set up post robot and listen for it. Now we just set it. All right, so now we're going to implement on login on the xprop. Once again, it should be pretty simple. We do window.xprops.onLogin. We're going to execute it as a function. We're going to send it user. And that is it for that part. All right, so the next one, I find part 3. We're going to implement the getUser xprop. We're going to call the function and send it the user variable. So once again, we'll say window.xprops.getUser and send it the user variable. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now if I refresh my page, I should have a working application. I'm going to refresh my login page here. I'm going to log out to make sure I'm actually logged out. And then I should be able to log in. We'll see an alert that says congrats on the login. If I hit OK, we'll see the email is logged in. I can also click log out and you'll see this nice little light box pop up. So that's pretty cool functionality that, we just basically created this nice looking light box with one function call called render lightbox. If we would call render, it would have rendered it in an iframe. I believe there's also a render pop-up that would render it into a pop-up window. Then we cut down a lot of additional code in the example from post robots. We're not having to do all these post robot send, post robot on. xComponent is taking care of all of that for us. So that is pretty cool. All right, so here's the answers to our exercise. Part 3, we set the value of the input to the xprops email, and we call the xprops on login when we click the submit button, and then we call window xprops get user with the user when it first loads to send the user back. Once again, you should be able to refresh your page and have a completely working application. And that is the final part of our exercise. The next video will go over xComponent troubleshooting.